Alright, so if you don't already know, Sonic Frontiers is now playable on macOS. So I'm going to get into the details of how I got this thing running and how well it runs. So we're going to get into all this right now. But if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please make sure to subscribe. We are trying to hit 100,000 subscribers. So yeah, Sonic Frontiers did not get a native Mac port, but if you have an M1 Mac, there are pretty much 4 ways you can play video games on that system. Either they're native Mac ports, which they probably aren't. You use Parallels to run Windows and run the games within that, or you use something called Crossover that emulates Windows applications without running Windows, or you just use an emulator. Obviously, Sonic Frontiers did not get a native Mac port. Trying to run it through Parallels Windows 11 just doesn't open, even though I've gotten plenty of other games working on there before. I did a whole video covering past Sonic games actually and how I got them running on the Mac. And in that video, I also used Crossover, but that didn't work with Sonic Frontiers as I cannot get Crossover working right now. I don't know what's happened, but it just doesn't want to work anymore, which leaves emulation. And as of today, as I record this video, Ryujinx has just gotten a Mac port, meaning you can now run Switch games on your M1 Mac, and I believe it also runs on Intel Macs as well. So I'm using an M1 Max 16-inch MacBook Pro, 32 gigs of RAM. So I figured I'd get my thoughts on how well or not well it runs. So to summarize, for those of you who've already tried Ryujinx on Windows, it pretty much runs the same as that, which means it's not fully ready, but it can work. The performance being bad is probably more to do with the emulator than the power of the MacBook Pro, because honestly, I don't think it was even breaking a sweat, and I raised the resolution to 4K. First of all, I'm recording through the microphone audio, which is why the audio of the game sounds a bit lower quality, essentially, because recording on a Mac is a bit of a pain, but the audio for the most part sounds fine. In terms of compatibility, I was able to upscale the game to 4K. Whether I run at 4K or native resolution doesn't make a difference on the performance, so I need to make that clear. In terms of performance, it's playable for the most part, but when you load into the open zone, whether you just come out of cyberspace or whatever, it does lag for a few seconds or so, maybe more than a few seconds. I think it's compiling shaders or something, and then eventually it gets up to close to the 30 FPS that the Switch version is supposed to run at. I didn't use an actual controller, I was just playing around with keyboard and mouse, which is why I had some issues in the footage. You'll probably see points where I kept opening up tutorial prompts, and I think that's because I set the D-pad to the same arrow keys on the keyboard as the analog stick. But that was just more so a controller setting issue and not the emulator not working. But when it's running, it seems to run fine, I guess. I mean, obviously it's still the Switch version, so it's still gonna look a lot more hideous. There were definitely some glitches on Sonic where he was showing up a bit black at points, but at other points he was showing up fine. And I think the most important issue is that the game does tend to crash randomly. I couldn't really replicate crashes in the same area except homing attacking up one of the sets of rocks towards the end of the tutorial. For that particular section, I found it easier to just avoid homing attacking so it wouldn't crash. But aside from that, the crashes just seem to be random after playing for a little while. But yeah, the emulator will just crash and then you have to reopen it, and it's a bit of a pain. I'm not gonna show the crashes in this footage. I'm just gonna like kind of edit everything together, but I'm just putting it out there for those of you who are thinking maybe I'll just play the whole game like this. I don't think that's a good idea, especially since piracy is bad and you should be ripping your own ROMs from the cartridge. And if you have the cartridge, you might as well just have a Switch and play it on that, I guess. Just like I did. I mean, I used my cartridge, so yeah, I wouldn't recommend playing it like this if you could just get it on PC. I mean, let's be real. But if you are stuck with a Mac and you really want to try out Sonic Frontiers, I guess you could go this route. But I mean, if you're stuck with a Mac and you like the game, you probably should have another console, which would allow you to just play the game on that, since it's on everything. But for those of you who want to see this, yes, this is how Sonic Frontiers runs on Mac. So I'm gonna let the footage roll for a bit. We made it past the tutorial section. It was a pain because of the crashing and whatnot. Load times are pretty long. I kept all the load times intact just to keep it authentic so you know what it's like. I'll leave the link to download the emulator in the description. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell. But that's all I have to say right now. So, Premy out.
Return to the digital dimension. Use that gear to bridge the gap between. It is not enough to make the connection. One gear will not suffice. Hunt down another target and take its gear. Use the... Return to cyberspace as many times as it takes.
Is that you?
Hello? Is someone there? Help me!
Hold on. I'll get you out of there.
You are the key. Be empowered with this technique.